Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I am your host, Dr. Renee Jordan, and today I'm going to read to you my blog post from April 2018 entitled New York City Day Trip. So yesterday, I took the first flight out to New York City to serve as a chair for the Instructional Technology Special Interest Group Computational Thinking and Robotics paper session at the 2018 American Educational Research Association, AERA, annual meeting. The theme of the meeting was the dreams, possibilities, and necessities of public education. My advisor, Dr. Brendan Calandra, Georgia State University College of Education and Human Development, Department of Learning Sciences, finally got to see me at work at a conference, and he was pleased. Before the session, I got to visit my friend of 15 years, Tamika Jackson, now Dr. Tamika Jackson, an all-around rock star at her school in the Bronx, where she is doing great things. Here are a few of the cool people I ran into and met before taking the last flight out of New York City. Dr. Gwendolyn Benson from Georgia State University, John, Adam, and Anthony. Now, the reason this blog post is significant because it's one of the many ways I navigated attending conferences on my own budget. So it was one thing if I could go for professional development and I wasn't presenting, I wasn't serving as a discussant or a chair. I could ask my supervisor at work if I could attend this conference. These would be my goals for attending. When I come back, I hope to have learned X, Y, and Z. When I'm able to do that, then my department or my supervisor would be able to support my professional development and pay for me to attend. However, whenever I presented or served as a discussant or chair, in other words, if I actually was attending the conference in order to help with the conference or further my individual research, then I would have to pay for it. Now, once again, always ask your department if they are able to fund you. Now, if you are a student or faculty member and you're attending and you're presenting, you will most likely be able to be funded. So since I was serving as a chair, I needed to take off from work in order to attend the conference. And I funded myself for this particular trip. And in order to save money, I found out when the program was released for that AERA meeting, when my session would take place. So even though the conference was over the course of a couple of days, I decided that in order to honor my own budget, that I was going to attend for the day that I actually had an assigned task to take care of, in this case, chairing a paper session. And so, because I'm able to get direct flights to a lot of places multiple times a day, I took the first flight out to New York so that I could get there early. And so early that I was able to visit one of my friends from, wow, a long time ago. But at the time, we had been friends for 15 years. And so I was able to get off the plane, catch a bus and a train. And from the train, I walked to my friend's school and I was able to drop in. Now, she knew I was coming. We had an appointment to do breakfast, but the day of, something happened and I ended up meeting her at work instead of at breakfast. That worked out because I was able to see where she worked, meet the people who she worked with and I only heard of, and it was a great time to catch up. And after I caught up with her, I was able to get back on the train, take it downtown, and get to my session. Now, in order to prep for this kind of thing, you have to dress in a way that's flexible. So I needed to make sure that I had a good pair of walking shoes, but were also stylish enough to pass for professional shoes, if you will, not necessarily pointy toe, hard bottom shoes, but something that looked appropriate enough with my outfit that was also had a little flair to it in terms of style, but I was able to dress in a way that was comfortable for both the plane, walking, riding the train, riding the bus, getting to where I needed to go, and back. So I chaired the session. I was able to provide those who participated in the paper session with a good amount of feedback, ask them questions, and then even question them about some of the assumptions that were made in their work. Now, I'm not an expert in robotics, but because of my background in education, specifically with curriculum and instruction, I'm able to find holes in arguments in ways that others may or may not when they are talking about interdisciplinary fields. And so, although my background is in curriculum, I was going to school for instructional technology, and I had a biology bachelor's, I still was able to contribute to the conversation because of the amount of reading that I do as a student at the time and as an educator as well. Also, because I had the opportunity to review their papers before the session, I was able to make note of things that I wanted to talk about by the time I got to the session. So when you chair a paper session or you serve as a discussant, you will at least be able to read the abstracts of those who are going to present. Now, when you are serving as a discussant, you're more likely to have access to the full papers that people submit that they plan to present. And that allows you to give them feedback in greater detail because you're able to look at the papers on your own time and sift through them, read them thoroughly, go back, flip, compare, and that way you can make notes so that when you come to the paper session, you're able to facilitate a conversation between the panel of paper presenters and the audience. Sometimes it takes a little questioning to help get the conversation going. And so one of the things I would do as a conference chairperson and a discussant, I would first pose the opportunity for people from the audience to ask questions and to provide feedback, as well as provide their own comments in terms of any holes that they may find. I know I have questions, but if the audience asks them first, that's even better because then it's involving the audience. They're not just sitting there receiving the information, but they're actively engaged in the conversation by posing things that might not have been addressed during the presentation. Now, it doesn't mean that the questions that they're asking are a result of the presenters not including that information in their paper. It's just not enough time to actually go into great detail when you're presenting a paper, everything that's in there, specifically the literature reviewed. You will have to always review the literature, but you might not always have the time during your presentation to list everyone that you've read in order to help frame your work. So by offering the audience an opportunity to engage first, I'm allowing them to contribute. I'm allowing them to actively engage in the conversation. And it also decreases the number of questions that I would bring up in case there is a pause in the questioning. And if they ask their questions first, I'm still able, if time runs out, to share my questions with those who presented by either emailing it to them, or if I have them written down, I can hand them to them, or I can simply talk to them after the session to discuss the questions and the comments that I had, or to share with them that information, and perhaps we can connect at a later time. The questions, the comments, the feedback, the discussion that takes place during the paper session can help people frame their work or frame their paper, revise their paper, update their paper, restructure their paper, go back and look up information to include in their paper before they submit the final copy that would either be published in the electronic platform offered by the conference or before they submit it for publication. Now, you have to be mindful when you're doing a paper session or submitting a paper for a conference of the copyright rules that go along with it, because you may or may not be able to submit that paper to another entity. In some cases, you are able to submit that paper to another entity. And in other cases, what it might do is help you to prepare the final work if it was a work in progress. That's something that you would have to include in your conference presentation. You would have to include a note that says, hey, this is a work in progress. In other words, it's not finished. It's not the completed paper. It's not done. And your intent is to submit it to somewhere else so that you can see about getting it published in a journal. So once again, this is from earlier. Not only should you participate in conferences in terms of presenting, you should also participate in conferences by serving as a chair or a discussant, or even a panel moderator in order to get service experience that you can include in your curriculum vitae as well as your resume. Now, although I did not have a background in robotics, I did have a good understanding of computational thinking as a result of my graduate research assistantship with my advisor. The AMAZE project looked at computational thinking as it related to the way in which students programmed their mobile applications using MIT App Inventor. That's most likely one of the reasons why my professor, Dr. Brenda Calandra, was in that session, because it dealt with computational thinking. In addition to presenting at conferences and being a part of the facilitators that help the conference move forward by way of being a conference chair, ooh, that's something else. By way of being a chair for a paper session or a discussant or a panel moderator, take the opportunity to talk to the people who are there. You never know who you're going to meet, so make sure that you network. Now, since you're traveling, if you know people in the area, it might be a good idea to catch up with some friends and family while you're in that city for that time period. After the conference session, I did take a break because it took a lot out of me going from the flight, a bus, a train, the Bronx, Manhattan. So I found myself at Junior's Cheesecake having a great meal and dessert. So I want to encourage you to make the most of attending conferences. Make sure you're able to get in some things that you enjoy while you are there. For those of you who notice my background is a little different, I have another piece of artwork that is garnishing my merch. So if you appreciate this artwork, you're welcome to go to my merch page, which is Black-Liberation.Tech.creator-spring.com, where you can find that on tough case phone covers and a handy dandy notebook. I also have some merch that contains the other artwork on my previous episodes. Once again, go to Black-Liberation.Tech.creator, that's creator-spring.com, and you'll be able to get this artwork on some tough cases for your phone or a handy dandy notebook. Once again, thank you for tuning in for an episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I am your host, Dr. Renee Jordan. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and share, rate and review the podcast to help make it more discoverable. And until next time, bye-bye.